I'm so happy you can join me in this crochet tutorial to make a super textured and squishy pumpkin. Included in this tutorial are step-by-step instructions to make this pumpkin with this fabulous textured ribbed effect and the pumpkin stem with Amigurumi techniques. This is a simple, easygoing project that is great for all crochet levels to learn and enjoy as a chill-out crochet project. It's also a very quick project to make, and you can have lots of pumpkins made in a variety of colours and in a variety of sizes in a weekend. This pattern is so addictive. Once you've worked the first few rows, you'll know exactly what you're doing and you'll be crocheting up pumpkins almost in your sleep. Welcome back to my channel, or hello if you're new. I'm Pauline from Making Polly, and I'm delighted you can join me for this tutorial. Firstly, for the tutorial you will need any yarn type and weight as you wish. I have used James C. Brett Rustic Mega Chunky yarn in Cream Sprinkles for the pumpkin and Drops Big Merino in Lavender for the pumpkin stem, both of which are from my yarn stash. You will also need a hook suitable to create a solid but not too tight fabric for the pumpkin. I have used a 7mm hook, and for the pumpkin stem I have used a 3.5mm hook. You will need scissors for cutting your yarn, and an embroidery needle for sewing in your ends and for assembly and finishing. I have used one with a bigger eye for sewing chunky yarn. You may also wish to use a ruler or tape measure for measuring, and the ruler can come in handy as a stuffing tool. And of course you'll need some toy stuffing for your pumpkin and your pumpkin stem. All the materials are also listed in the description. During this tutorial I will give instructions in both UK and US terminology. So let's get started. With your chosen yarn for your pumpkin, make a slip knot in your chosen method. Then insert your chosen hook for the pumpkin, ready to create a foundation chain. The length of your foundation chain will determine the height of your pumpkin. I have worked 31 chains in total, and the length of my foundation chain is 26 centimeters, which is roughly 10 inches. Which has created a pumpkin with a height of 22 centimeters, which is roughly 8.5 inches. You can pause the video here to create your foundation chain. Now we will work row 1 into the top loop of the foundation chain. Work a slip stitch into the second chain from the hook, and then work one slip stitch into each of the chains to the end of the row. You can pause the video here to do so. And at the end of row 1, the number of slip stitches you will have will be one less than the foundation chain you worked. So I have 30 slip stitches. Now we will turn our work to work row 2. First work one turning chain, which does not count as a stitch throughout the pattern. Then working into the back loops only of the stitches from row 1, work one slip stitch into each of the back loops to the end of the row. You can pause the video here to do so. And at the end of row 2, you will have the same number of stitches that you ended with on row 1. For me, that is 30. Again, turn your work to work the next row. From row 3 onwards, you will repeat row 2 for each row. So for each row, work a turning chain first, then work one slip stitch into each of the back loops only to the end of the row. The number of rows you will work will determine the width of your pumpkin. You will create a long enough piece of fabric that when folded in half will become the width of your pumpkin before stuffing. And you will finish on an even number of rows. As you continue to work the rows, you will start to see the stretchy ribbed effect that the pattern gives. If you need to start a new ball of yarn, you will start in the last yarn over of the previous stitch. So insert your hook into the stitch, then wrap the new yarn end around your hook and pull through both loops on your hook to finish your slip stitch. Then you can continue working with the new ball of yarn. You can pause the video here to work your desired number of rows. When completed, I worked a total of 62 rows. When you're happy with the length of your fabric, you can fold it in half so that the foundation chain is adjacent to the last row that's just been worked. You can use your measuring tape or ruler to measure the width of your pumpkin before stuffing. The width of mine is 19 centimeters, which is roughly 7.5 inches. and has allowed me to create a pumpkin that is 17 centimeters wide after stuffing, which is roughly 6.7 inches. Now we will go on to join both sides. So again we'll make one turning chain, which does not count as a stitch, and again work into the back loops only of the next row and into the foundation chain. Rather than working into the other side of the foundation chain from row 1, I have worked into the loops at the back of the foundation chain, so that I can replicate the ribbed effect as much as possible. So when you've located that loop, work a slip stitch through both sides, and then continue joining with slip stitches to the end of the row, working into the back loops of the next row and into the loops at the back of the foundation chain. After working a few stitches, you will begin to see that the join has a similar look to the ribbed texture. You can pause the video here to continue working to the end of the row. I like the side that's facing as the right side of the pumpkin, but you may wish to turn your work inside out to use the other side as the right side of the pumpkin. It's entirely up to you which side you prefer. Now we will use the yarn to sew around the bottom to close the hole. So cut your yarn, leaving a long tail for sewing, and pull the yarn end through. Then thread the yarn onto your embroidery needle. First close the gap between the join by sewing into the other side. Then we will start working around the bottom end, working through the side of the stitches. So weave your embroidery needle through the stitches a few at a time. And as you pull the yarn through tightly, you will see the stitches starting to pull together. Work your way around the opening through all of the stitches back to where you began, where the join is. You can pause the video here to do so. Then pull your yarn end tight to continue closing the hole. You will need to work around the hole another 2 or 3 times, weaving your embroidery needle through the stitches as before to completely close the hole. You can pause the video here to do so. Then sew in your ends to be ready to stuff your pumpkin and close the top. So go ahead and start stuffing with the toy stuffing. You will need quite a bit of stuffing to fill it right up and make the pumpkin quite firm but squishy at the same time. You can fill it to about 5 centimeters or 2 inches from the top before you start closing the top hole. You can pause the video here to do so. Thread the yarn onto your embroidery needle, and as before, weave your needle through the sides of the stitches around the top of the pumpkin. Continue all the way around. You can pause the video here to do so. Then sew in the starting end to anchor it in place. Stuff the pumpkin with more toy stuffing. Using your hand to stuff firmly and shape the pumpkin. Then pull the yarn end to continue closing the hole. As before, weave the embroidery needle into the sides of the stitches around the top another once more. You may want to then stuff the pumpkin a little more, and you will probably need to use a tool to help you stuff it this time. Then sew around the top one more time to close the hole even further. But it doesn't need to be completely closed at the top, as it will be covered with the pumpkin stem. If the fabric that you made for your pumpkin is quite thick and stiff like mine is, you can push it in places to distort it and give it that more pumpkin look. Then pull your yarn end tight and sew the end in. And your pumpkin is now complete and ready for its pumpkin stem. So let's get started on the stem. With your chosen yarn for the stem, make a magic ring. You will find a link in the description for my how-to video to make and close a double magic ring. Now with your chosen hook for the pumpkin stem, work 6 UK double crochets, which are 6 US single crochets, into the magic ring. You can pause the video here to do so. At the end of round 1, you will have 6 stitches. And close the magic ring, ready to start round 2. And in round 2, we will increase by 6. So work 2 UK double crochets, which are 2 US single crochets in each stitch around. You can pause the video here to do so. And at the end of round 2 you will have 12 stitches. In round 3 we will not increase the number of stitches, but we will use increases and decreases. First, work 2 UK double crochets, which are US single crochets, in the first 2 stitches. Then work 1 UK double crochet, which is 1 US single crochet, in the next 3 stitches. Then work 1 invisible decrease across the next 2 stitches. So insert your hook into the front loop only of the next stitch and the following stitch. Then yarn round hook and pull up a loop. Then yarn round hook and pull through both loops on your hook. Then again work another invisible decrease across the next 2 stitches. Then again work 1 UK double crochet, which is 1 US single crochet, in the next 3 stitches to the end of the round. And again at the end of round 3 you will have 12 stitches. For the next 2 rounds, work 1 UK double crochet, which is 1 US single crochet, into each stitch around. You can pause the video here to do so. And at the end of round 5 you should have 12 stitches. In round 6 we will not increase the number of stitches, but we will again use increases and decreases. Work 1 UK double crochet, which is 1 US single crochet, in the first stitch. Then work 2 UK double crochets, which are 2 US single crochets, in the next 2 stitches. Then work 1 UK double crochet, which is 1 US single crochet, in the next 3 stitches. Then work an invisible decrease across the next 2 stitches, and then repeat that across the following 2 stitches. Then work 1 UK double crochet, which is 1 US single crochet, in the last 2 stitches of the round. And at the end of round 6 you should have 12 stitches. And you will see that the pumpkin stem has a slight curve to it. For round 7, work 1 UK double crochet, which is 1 US single crochet, into each stitch around. You can pause the video here to do so. And at the end of round 7 you will have 12 stitches. In round 8 we will increase by 12. Work 2 UK double crochets, which are 2 US single crochets, into each stitch around. You can pause the video here to do so. And at the end of round 8 you should have 24 stitches. Cut your yarn, leaving a long tail for sewing, and pull your yarn end through. Then stuff the pumpkin stem firmly. Then thread your yarn end onto your embroidery needle and finish off with an invisible join. Work through the second stitch of the round from front to back and through the front loop only of the last stitch of the round from back to front. And now you are ready to join your pumpkin stem to your pumpkin. Place your stem over the hole at the top of your pumpkin and ensure you're happy with how it looks before you start sewing. And you can hold it in place with pins if you wish. Now start sewing to attach it. Work through a stitch on the pumpkin that sits below the front loop that the yarn end is through on the pumpkin stem. Then work up through that same front loop and then down through the next front loop of the pumpkin stem. Then repeat that process, working through the stitch on the pumpkin that sits below that front loop. Work back up through that same front loop on the pumpkin stem, and then down the next front loop on the pumpkin stem. And keep repeating this process around to about halfway around. You can pause the video here to do so. You may wish to stuff the pumpkin just a little bit more to finish it off. And you can use a stuffing tool to push it right in. Then continue sewing around in the same way as before to completely attach the pumpkin stem to the pumpkin. You can pause the video here to do so. Then just sew in your end and your pumpkin is complete. Thank you so much for joining me on this crochet tutorial, friend. I really hope you enjoyed it and that it was useful for you. I would really appreciate it if you liked this video, and I would love to know in the comments how you've got on. Also, please don't forget to subscribe for more fun and informative crochet tutorials.